loopy update.
Do you want fries with that?
Space not real.
That's that's right. Flippy's in Space is back. And we reported on the new Russian robotic arm attached to the space station there, a historic moment during such tumultuous times in their homeland. But there's some new news, folks, and let's explore it together. This is coming from space.com. The headline is European robotic arm moves for first time during 250th spacewalk at space station. A new robotic arm for the International Space Station successfully made its oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot again. Flippy is our colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs, enslaving our children, and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about Flippy as a way to explore all the new, fun, and exciting ways that robots are taking over the world, and now there's nothing we can do about it. This Dayquil, man, is making it so I can't do the show right. Sorry, if you're new to the show, Flippy's very important to our analysis of world events. Robotic arms having such a I don't know,
integral part in the development.
Yes, an integral part of development, a subtle messaging tool of the elites. And so there we go. Okay, so now we're talking about the space arm. All right, we heard last week the new Russian space arm was put into work or got installed or whatever. But listen to this. Oh, and by the way, we thought it was weird because we follow space arms in our search for.
I've seen the Russian space arm reported dozens of times in the last few weeks, over and over,
right?
Yeah.
So we follow, and they love reporting on these space arms. There's something about space arms that are like, oh my gosh, it's huge news. The Canada Arm 2, thank you Canada, is a giant arm up there. Is Canada's sort of contribution to the space station. China came out with their arm, and they were trying to like arm wrestle and battle our satellites with their big arm. And then last week, the news about a Russian arm. It just fits so well into the series of events that have been going on in the world. Okay, there you go. There's the context for anybody new. A new robotic arm for the International Space Station successfully made its first move as 2 Russian cosmonauts conducted the 250th spacewalk to service and upgrade the outpost. I love how we're calling the International Space Station an outpost now.
Wait. So is this the Russian arm or what?
I hear some confusion.
Yeah. What's happening here?
Let's learn some more.
Okay.
Expedition 67 flight engineers Oleg Artemiev and Denis Dmitriev on Thursday continued the work they began on a spacewalk 1 week ago to outfit and configure the new European robotic arm, ERA, for use on the Russian
exotic Russian arm is what it stands for.
Right. For extreme Russian arm for use on the Russian segment of the space station. Their 7-hour, 42-minute spacewalk culminated in the remote manipulator taking its first small steps around the exterior of the orbiting complex.
Now, when you reported this last time, we were talking about how the Russian arm didn't have a name. The Russian space arm didn't have a name.
Weird.
And we were like, what's going on with that?
Exactly. On all these arms, they all have very special names. They're like characters in their own right. They are part of the team, these arms. And we commented last week while reporting on this, really weird how they're not saying a name of this arm. It's not like Russia to not name it something like Satan 2 or some hardcore thing. They love naming things. And it was even weirder that the news was not even making up a name. Nobody was naming this arm. And it turns out it's because it's not even Russian. It's European.
How dare they let Russians touch it? What's going on up there?
Exactly. What is the point here? It really speaks to kind of the strange power dynamics, not just when it comes to, the human space industry, where, it's a rainbow coalition of all stripes, but what happens up there and the equipment provided and who's installing it and what part of the space station it's attached to and all these things really speak very deeply into relationships between, geopolitical relationships that you don't see on the news. And I think the fact that they refused to tell us last week that the Russian space arm was actually a European space arm says something very specific. Now, they do talk about some other arms, and I think it might give us a little insight. So I'm going to continue. Quote, "It started to move. Yes, it started moving," exclaimed Artemiev, as one of the arm's two end effectors were separated from its grappling point 3 hours and 4 minutes into the spacewalk.
Really
the motion marked the arm's first movement since before it was launched to the station with Nauka multi-purpose science module in July 2021. The ERA, which was provided by the European Space Agency, is the first arm capable of servicing the exterior of the Russian segment of the station. So there was no arm that could even reach the Russians. Gonz. The complex's other arms, the Canada Arm 2 and Japanese Experiment Module Remote Manipulator System.
GEMERMS.
Forgot about GEMERMS. We did report on GEMERMS.
Yeah.
Are the station's U.S. operating segment, are on the U.S.'s operating segment, USOS, and cannot extend far enough to reach many of the needed areas on the Russian side. So, Gonz, the U.S. part of the station has two arms, a Japanese one and a Canada one, representing the U.S.'s
it's typical
alliance.
of the U.S. to use proxies to do the dirty work.
But also the alliance of the East and the West of the U.S. sort of,
Canada,
but
Japan.
not able to reach Russia. Russia just out of reach.
Yes.
And so it takes the Europeans to basically attach themselves to the Russians. For any, robotic arm related maneuvers or whatever. Like the Canada Arm 2, the ERA moves like an inchworm, positioning hand over hand between fixed base points. The 37-foot-long robotic arm is able to be driven from both sides and outside the station. They're talking about Canada Arm 2 there. To reach the point of first motion, Artemiev and Matviev first opened the hatch and exited the Poisk Mini Research Module at 10:58 a.m. to begin the spacewalk after using the Strela boom, the manually operated arm that prior to ERA was the only means of moving cosmonauts and equipment around the Russian segment to reach their work site. Meow, meow, meow. It kind of just goes on for
I was going to say
it's a very dramatic sort of telling. But hold on, it gets even better. Once in the hand, Artemiev threw the bundle up insulation overboard for its eventual destructive entry. He just threw some trash away is what happened. Yeah. And then there's a quote, 3, 2, 1. Go towards the horizon, said Artemiev, as he literally just threw trash towards Earth. It is moving quite nicely, he says. Anyways, there you go. It goes on and on and on. But I think there's something's going on here, Gonz. I think there's some messaging. This European space arm attaching itself to the Russian module. I not exactly have a full translation of what this means geopolitically.
This is where I will...
I love it.
I will pick you up with the geopolitics and suggest that this is the beginnings. I mean, it's always kind of been there, but I think more so now as we enter the strange internet metaverse land, astropolitics. We're going to see more and more of how astropolitics will affect geopolitics, and how, there's always been a discrepancy. This is something I've noticed from years ago.
Did you term that coin?
No, I don't think so. Did I coin that coin? No, I think somebody else has used. Astropolitics has to be a somewhat used.
I love it.
Word.
I got to remember that.
Yeah,
astropolitics.
I think we should bring it up more often in the context of what's happening up there allegedly, because there has always been a discrepancy between how nations cooperate and are doing things up on the ISS. In contrast to what's happening geopolitically on the ground, where it's like, oh, these two nations are in real tension, but in space, like China during the Trump era, especially, oh, those Chinese, those bad China, but then up in the space station, it was like, hey, everybody we're all family, everyone gets along. And same thing with Russia. So
right, and to repeat part of the analysis from last week, this is the secular sort of religion. It's the secular spirituality, getting far away from Earth. You can look down. It's the pale blue dot. It's what all the astronauts say.
We reported a couple of years ago. There was like an Earth flag or something. The international flag. Here it is. The international flag.
Last year or something.
Yeah, international flag of planet Earth, and it was that blue, sort of new agey looking.
It's the sacred geometry.
The sacred geometry. Yes. Yeah. No, I have it right here. Yeah, I think this is. We got to keep an eye on stuff like this when they declare stuff like this, and then you got different kind of interactions going on.
It's got an occult sort of aspect of it. Again, these astronauts, they're sort of the priests or prophets. I'd say more prophets, because they're not so much priests. That's like the Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientists. They're the priests. The prophets of the secular spirituality of scientism and space are the astronauts.
Yeah.
They are the prophets.
They're the priests, yeah.
No, they're the prophets.
Oh, you're saying they're the prophets.
They stand apart from us. They come in
right, because they had the perspective of the gods. They have sat on the throne overlooking Earth. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they are the prophets up there. They're getting along. They're trying to tell us, beware, be warned. If you don't get along, it's not going to work out, just like the prophets of the Bible, And
it'd be great signaling if this European arm just like crushes one of the Russian cosmonauts.
That's what I'm saying. You got to keep a lookout for it.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like,
because now back to the occult part, real quick.
Sure.
On that line, it's the as above, so below.
Right.
And you have a literal, as above up in the space station, the astropolitics, the prophets looking down on us. As above, so below. What happens on the space station, at least the idea is in that spirituality, as it happens on the space station, so shall it be on Earth.
Yeah.
So that's why we look out for these types of things. I'm very curious to watch, Europe and Russia and how this arm and the messages sort of being sent to us from the prophets.
Yeah.
How it might play out.
And I think this is something we can all keep an eye on, regardless of whether you think space is real or fake, or, put that discussion aside. This is what's being put in front of people, these articles, these flags, these international organizations, and all that kind of stuff. So
we see it play out.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning and talking about.